Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this annual event, marking our 27th year. It's always great to see this event draw such an extensive list of participants, and although I'm not able to see all of your familiar faces in person, I do want to personally thank you for your continuous support. I'm Steve Bowers, chairperson for this year's event, and we trust that you enjoyed the opportunity to catch up with a few old friends during the networking portion of this event. That's always such a nice part of this event, and we wanted to find a way to best replicate that this year in light of the circumstances. I have to say that despite the fact that 2020 has been a challenging year, there's some silver linings to these circumstances. Typically, one of the most challenging parts of the event is to get folks into their seats after the networking portion of the event. This year, we figured out how to get everyone into their seats at exactly the same time. And now we know, for future years, we just need to start a small global pandemic to make that happen. And now that you are in your seats, let's get this program started for you. Joe Correa with J.G. Petrucci Company is this year's vice chair of the committee. Keeping with tradition, Joe is going to get us started with the Pledge of Allegiance, which will certainly be special this year in light of all the happenings in our country. In addition, we have some special guests lined up for you for the pledge, courtesy of our honoree. Joe?
Thanks, Steve. Please join me in welcoming Scout Leader John Pavis of the Mincy Trail Council, Boy Scouts of America, and the Young Scouts from Troop 352 to recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Pavis, and I'm the Scoutmaster of Troop 352, sponsored by Notre Dame of Bethlehem Parish, and the continuing legacy of the same Scout troop that Mr. Zator was a member of in his youth. On behalf of Troop 352, I would like to congratulate Joe and the other award recipients, and Joe for his continuing adherence to living by the same principles we Scouts learned today of duty to God, country, and service to others. I ask you to please join me in Troop 352 in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice
for all.
For all.
for all.
for all.
for all,
For all.
for all.
with liberty and justice for all.
It's my pleasure to report yet another successful year this year with over 60 organizations sponsoring or assisting in parts of this year's production. Think about that for a second. That's a lot of organizations in coordination to make this happen for the March of Dimes and for our honorees. Sponsor forms, logos, supplying attendee information, sending in ads, 2 production companies involved, websites, and the list goes on. So we truly appreciate your commitment to make all of this happen today. As I mentioned previously, this is our 27th year hosting this event, yet our very first virtual version. Each year, we come together to recognize an outstanding individual and an outstanding commercial real estate project that have made a significant contribution to our Lehigh Valley community. Award selection criteria center around economic growth, character, reputation, philanthropy, and community impact. Funds raised by this signature event help to support the March of Dimes mission. In that theme, I wanted to share a few facts about the March of Dimes. Did you know that the March of Dimes was founded in 1938 and is widely credited with the funding for the research that created the vaccine to eradicate polio? After putting polio to rest, the March of Dimes changed its mission and focus in 1958 to the prevention of birth defects, and the March of Dimes has had a continued focus on the prevention of birth defects for the last 62 years, and as well they should. Did you know that 1 in every 10 infants born today in the United States is born prematurely? So if the average family is 4 to 5 people, that's almost 1 in every 2 families where someone's born prematurely. Most recently, the March of Dimes also established the COVID-19 Vaccine Intervention Support Fund to address the urgent need for research, advocacy, and education to protect moms, babies, and families from COVID-19 and also the unknown future effects of COVID-19. As we all know, healthy moms and babies are still considered an essential life-sustaining business in 2020. And even a global pandemic cannot stop babies from being born. So your support is appreciated now more than ever. And since we're talking about supporting the mission, we're extremely happy to have Majestic Realty as this year's event sponsor. A big thank you to the Majestic organization as this year's event partner, and a special thanks for bringing the industrial real estate market update to kick off our programming and provide us some insight as to the state of the current industrial real estate market conditions within our Lehigh Valley. We have a great panel for you, including one of our fellow committee members and former March of Dimes honoree, Frank Smith of NAI Summit, as our moderator. So without further delay, let's kick off the Lehigh Valley Industrial Real Estate Market Update.
Good morning. I'm Frank Smith, President of NAI Summit. I'll be your moderator for today. We're here today to talk about the industrial market. I have some very esteemed colleagues to my left, and they are, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Frank. I'm Jeff Lockard with Jones Lang LaSalle.
I'm Kim Jacobson with Lee & Associates of Eastern Pennsylvania.
Eric Schock from Fitzpatrick, Lenson, Buba.
Well, thank you for joining me. We have a couple of questions we'd like to throw out to the panelists. We're going to do a little back and forth on that. The Lehigh Valley is arguably one of the largest industrial markets in the nation right now, and we see a lot of growth that's continuing to come down the pike. We're seeing in excess of over 120 million square feet of space, and we'd like to throw some questions out as to why is the Lehigh Valley market so hot? What's going on? What's causing this growth, and where does this take us into the future? And can I start with you, Jeff?
Sure. Look, I think it's a couple things that make the Lehigh Valley such an important industrial market, not just here in Pennsylvania or in the Northeast, but nationally. The trends that we've seen that we should highlight, I think, that have been really important so far this cycle is the continued expansion of the parcel carriers here. FedEx and UPS have spent upwards of $500 million on new infrastructure in this market. Labor here scores very high when compared to peer markets elsewhere in Pennsylvania. And then it's in Pennsylvania, but it's a New York or a New Jersey centric submarket where a lot of the users that locate here are very focused on the turns back to and from the port, New York City, and then to a lesser extent Philadelphia as well.
Right.
Kim, what do you see?
I also see that in addition to those metrics, the Lehigh Valley provides a really good quality of life for companies that headquarter here. In the last 10, 20 years, corporations have become much more concerned that their warehouses are an extension of their corporate headquarters, and the market provides them with a community to which promotes their corporate images as well.
Great, great. Eric, you look at this with a different lens. As an attorney, what's your viewpoint on this?
So getting them approved, I think over time has become more of a community and collective process, and that helps because when the brokers bring folks to the Lehigh Valley, they need to know that they're going to get the project up and running in a reasonable amount of time, and the project approval is a component of that.
Good point. Jeff, you had mentioned something about trends, and that's probably a good segue into what we're seeing in the Lehigh Valley. There seems to be some changes as compared to where we were just several years ago. What sort of trends are you seeing, both from the landlord side and the tenant side?
Look, I think one of the most important trends, and to Eric's point, is just the availability still to find land in this market. Your earlier point was this is a 120 million square foot market when you look at it today. And we've had the supply to get there. This market's built over 50 million square feet over the last 7, 8, 9 years. So a lot of companies that maybe looked for space in other places, like New Jersey, came here because there was availability of supply. And we think that's going to continue. The way JLL tracks it, we think there's another 30 to 40 million square feet that can still be built. And the trend is that as we stretch the Lehigh Valley further north, south, east, and west, we're starting to encounter more municipalities that are much more willing to adapt to this industry, to build more warehouse space in this market.
That makes sense. Kim, what about from your vantage point?
We're seeing buildings of higher clear heights. We're seeing more trailer parking that's being allocated to new developments. 10, 15 years ago, developers maxed out a site and really didn't give a lot of time and thought, me being one of them, to additional trailer parking, which now it's a given in a new project. So it's all part of how this whole industry has evolved.
Okay. Eric, you get to see this from the standpoint of some of the negotiations when we're working on those leases and representing the landlords and tenants. And some of the tenants, it's my understanding, are asking for things that maybe we didn't ask for in the past. Anything that you can share with us from a trend perspective from your vantage point?
Well, from what I am involved with, the land development side of it, there's a couple of factors from the leasing side. Number one, timing. So when the client developer comes in, we've seen it becoming more and more important in terms of this is when we need to deliver this because we have an end user lined up, and that's one of the part of our job as the land development attorneys is to manage that expectation of time with when are we truly going to be able to get this approved. Number two, from the land development side of things, and Jeff and Kim touched on this, like height, for example. That's become increasingly more important. We need to do a lot more of zoning amendments and changes of that sort. When you started out, you'd love to have what they called a by right plan, where your use was allowed and it seemingly was the easier path. Now, for example, with heights being driven up, there are still communities where the development is in a somewhat nascent stage. They're newer to the game. You might still have an ordinance with a 35-foot height, the same as a residence, that you're not going to be able to build anything. You'll have the other panelists will have no clients if we have to force that height requirement on it.
Great point, great point.
And I think to Eric's point too, in terms of the user demand in this market, it's largely dominated, at least right now, by a lot of retail and e-commerce companies, as well as food and beverage. And they're just, because of the amount of money they're spending on infrastructure inside the box, oftentimes more than it costs to build the actual building, they're just not willing to really make any meaningful sacrifices in terms of building design. They prefer new construction. They want 40-foot clear height. They want plenty of parking outside the area, whether it's for cars or trucks or both. So, and they want the ability to grow in the future. So even if they're not using 32 or a 36 or even a 40-foot clear building day one, they might be signing a 10, 15, or a 20-year lease. So they want the ability to grow inside the box rather than leasing additional space elsewhere in the market.
Good point. Next question. We're in an environment today that revolves around COVID. A year ago, we wouldn't even know what that was. So with that being the case, it's our understanding that the industrial market is really blossoming because more of us, because of this pandemic we're in, are inclined to consider our purchases offline. So e-commerce today, it's been popular, but it's becoming even more and more popular because of the environment that we're in.
What we have seen through really March is almost an acceleration of occupiers wanting to make sure they get space, not only so they can maintain the inventories that they have, but also build inventories. There's been a huge focus, especially with the food and beverage companies, to continue their supply chains, which through COVID, I think everybody would recognize that the first couple of weeks of COVID there were some supply chain pains where product just couldn't get to the stores fast enough or couldn't get out to the customers through online purchases. But as Jeff had mentioned earlier, there has been an increase in UPS, FedEx positions. We've seen additional packaging companies trying to move into the market to be able to keep up with the e-commerce companies that are coming into the market, as well as the companies that do final mile and same-day delivery. We sit in a very unique location that millions of people can be serviced within a 2-hour drive time of this market, including metropolitan New York, into Philadelphia, and then certainly to other points within the state. So the Lehigh Valley has really become one of those desired markets from an e-commerce standpoint.
No, look, it certainly has. I mean, the projections that I've heard is that we think in like a 9 or a 10-month stretch, because of COVID, we've experienced 5 years worth of projected growth on the retail e-commerce side of the business. And I think if you bifurcate out January and February, called pre-COVID, we were as busy as we've ever been in this market. There was maybe a 60-day stretch where tenants didn't go away. They were just kind of in a wait and see mode. And then once June, July rolled around, it's really been back to business as usual, at least on the industrial side. We're tracking more demand than we ever have in terms of total square footage and number of tenants looking for space in the market. And it's really created a supply-demand imbalance because, look, developers obviously have been delayed in getting their approvals and entitlements to start new construction because of COVID. Some of those developers just put new construction starts on pause. So what we thought would be a pretty robust supply pipeline in late 2020 into early 21, that's just not going to be the case.
Okay. Well, as a concluding question, I'd like to ask you folks what your thoughts are as it relates to the industrial market on a national basis, and maybe more specifically as it relates to the Lehigh Valley. Kim, would you like to start?
Sure. Still very bullish on the Lehigh Valley industrial market as well as the national market. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that we have seen, in addition to continued pipeline, the strong demand for our market from tenants, users, occupiers across a wide set of uses, whether it is e-commerce, whether it's food and beverage, whether it's manufacturing. Another metric that we've seen is the steady increase in rental rates that has actually outperformed any kind of measurable inflation that we have. We've been tracking over an 8% rent growth for the last 2 to 3 years in this market. And
that's fantastic.
Fully expect that rental rates will go over $7 a square foot. That's triple net.
Okay, that's good to know that. Jeff, how about your view?
Same view as Kim. I think every institutional investor or developer that places capital in other core markets across the country wants to be here in Lehigh Valley. I think more importantly too, if you look at the list of Fortune 100 companies, they're all already either here and expanding or they're out with active requirements now and want to be here in the near future.
I see three components: residential, commercial, and industrial. For a long time, residential was probably half of that practice. Now, warehousing is what we are doing. So from the way I look at it, as long as the clients remain interested and that's the type of development they're doing, that means we're remaining bullish because they're the ones who know by the time they get into my office saying, let's do this.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Jeff, Kim, Eric, for taking time out to discuss these trends that we're seeing in the industrial market, particularly here in the Lehigh Valley. So thank you very much.
That was some great information about the current state of the industrial market. It's really encouraging to see how the industrial real estate market is thriving and what a bright spot it is during this pandemic. And while we're talking about thriving during the pandemic, did you know that since its inception, this event has raised over $1.6 million, and this year, we actually eclipsed an event total of $108,000. This is a tremendous accomplishment and contribution that each and every one of you should be very proud of for doing your part. The event committee and the March of Dimes cannot thank you enough for your generous support during this extenuating time period. At this point, I would like to take a moment to recognize the major sponsors for their contributions in support of the March of Dimes. Leading the way for stronger, healthier babies in the Lehigh Valley is our event sponsor, Majestic Realty. We're especially thankful for your support as this year's top sponsor. A significant sponsor that supports the March of Dimes each year, Weiss Markets. Our platinum sponsors, Commerce Construction Company, Zator Law. Our gold sponsors, BB&T, now Truist, Fitzpatrick, Lentz & Buba, Jandal Land Company and Jandal Farms, Penn Community Bank, St. Luke's University Health Network, the Shoreline Group, Trammell Crow Company, our audiovisual sponsors, Americaven, Digital Feast Studios, Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation, and Via Media. Our media sponsors, Crystal Signatures, The Morning Call, 99.9 The Hawk, Service Electric Cable TV and Communications, Working Dog Press, Lamar. Our silver sponsors, American Bank, J.G. Petrucci Company, High Construction Company, Duke Realty, JLL, Ott Consulting, NFI, Watson Land Company, LVIP, Panoni. Our bronze sponsors, Bowler Engineering, Blue Rock, Liberty Engineering, Sermonera Architect, and ESSA Bank and Trust. S.A. Communal, Norris McLaughlin, Schlaup Incorporated, Sunburst Property Management, First Commonwealth Federal Credit Union, NAI Summit, Keystone Consulting Engineers, One Financial Services, and Provident Bank. Additionally, we'd like to thank all of our other contributors and sponsors of this year's event. At this time, I'd like to welcome back Joe Correa to talk about a few notable real estate projects and also introduce our mission family for this year. Joe?
As you can imagine, settling on one project of the year presents quite a challenge for our committee. With so much development taking place in the Lehigh Valley, there are so many worthy projects for us to consider. Last year, in addition to the project of the year, we highlighted a few honorable projects in the area. This year, it's my pleasure to tell you about 3 exciting projects and then show you how one of those projects played a vital role in our mission family story. First is Stuff Puffs. Founder and CEO Michael Tierney and his team started delivering chocolate-filled marshmallow treats to families across the nation last year. As the company grew, more manufacturing space was needed, and they have established a new 150,000 square foot facility in Hanover Township, Northampton County. This brand new state-of-the-art manufacturing facility is expected to create just over 130 jobs in the Lehigh Valley. Next is member-owned, not-for-profit financial cooperative First Commonwealth Federal Credit Union. Serving the Lehigh Valley since 1959, First Commonwealth opened their brand new corporate headquarters in Allentown a few months ago. As the largest credit union in the Lehigh Valley, this new facility will help First Commonwealth continue to provide exceptional service to its over 67,000 members and 1,500 businesses it presently serves in the region. And finally, the St. Luke's Women and Babies Pavilion, located at the Anderson campus in Bethlehem Township. This 4-story, 180,000 square foot facility represents St. Luke's continued commitment to providing high-level maternal and newborn care to the region. We have a special video for you this afternoon that illustrates just how St. Luke's and the March of Dimes are impacting the lives of so many families. And in this case, the lives of our fellow committee member, Laura Ledone Weiss, and her daughter Elizabeth, as this year's mission family.
The March of Dimes provides women and families with education on baby's health, pregnancy, and new motherhood. But they also supply support in the NICU families who are affected by premature births, birth defects, or other infant health problems. Hi, my name is Laura Ledone Weiss. I'm proud to be this year's mission family for the March of Dimes. It was 1997. My sister-in-laws and I were all pregnant, all 3 of us. Out of the 3 of us, 2 of us had children that were born in the NICU. And really that's when I learned about the March of Dimes and really what it meant. They're all about the education and the support that's needed for the families and about bringing the babies to full term. Mitchell, my son, he was born 7 weeks premature, and he spent 3 weeks in the NICU here at St. Luke's. And there's information that they give, family support that they have. All of that is all available through the March of Dimes. Mitchell, he graduated last year from high school. He's just the love of our lives. My daughter, her husband is a Marine. He was deployed, and my daughter was pregnant. COVID hits, and it's March. She was having a high-risk pregnancy, and we were going, what do we do? In North Carolina, with the closest NICU, is an hour and a half away and doesn't have a designated building. I had learned about St. Luke's finishing their Babies and Mothers Pavilion. there was a designated building. Talking to my friends at St. Luke's, they were telling me about all the measures they were putting in place. We decided to bring her here, and she delivered. My granddaughter, Ella Rose is her name.
I want to say thank you to Dr. Willis and all the doctors and nurses who cared for Ella Rose and I and helped us recover and get home safely. All the doctors and nurses were absolutely amazing, and I wouldn't have been able to get through it all without them. They were so supportive and helpful, and I was born at St. Luke's, and so was she.
So was Mitchell.
And so was Mitchell.
And all of your cousins.
I want everybody to remember, what this is all about and what the mission is. It's about the babies and the moms. Thank you, everybody, for coming to today's event. Please remember to fund the mission.
Laura, on behalf of our committee, I want to thank you and your family so much for sharing your story with us this afternoon. From your son Mitchell, your daughter Elizabeth, and granddaughter Ella Rose, it's clear to see the impact of the March of Dimes. And we're also so fortunate to have a tremendous healthcare organization in our area like St. Luke's. It's so wonderful to see how the March of Dimes and St. Luke's has touched the lives of you and your family in such a positive way. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank St. Luke's for so generously producing the Mission Family video this year so that we could share Laura and her family's heartwarming story. And this is what it's all about. This is the impact you, as our sponsors, have on so many families. Your continued support has such an incredible influence on changing the lives of so many families for the better. Thank you so much for your support and helping all of us fund the mission. As I mentioned earlier in the program, each year it's a challenge for us as a committee to select the project of the year. As we narrow down the frontrunners, we spend multiple meetings discussing the various projects. This year, one project stood out among its competition. Now, it's my privilege to introduce to you the 2020 Commercial and Industrial Real Estate Project of the Year, Majestic Bethlehem Center in the city of Bethlehem.
If we dial back to the mid-1990s in Bethlehem and the Lehigh Valley, it was a time of economic transition.
The Bethlehem Steel went into operations in the late 1800s and worked through to the late 1900s. Then, of course, with technology and industrialization of other countries, steel-making industry died off, and subsequently Bethlehem Steel exists no more.
The steel industry was in decline. In Bethlehem, about 1,800 acres, 4.5 miles of industrial site along the Lehigh River was fallow. At that time, we were desperately looking for developers to make an investment in our community. Majestic, who we never heard of at that time, out of Los Angeles, saw this site and had the foresight to see the opportunity here. It proved to be a very wise investment for them, and it proved to be a real kickstart for the city of Bethlehem and the region to have a company like Majestic want to be here.
And so we are currently here on 450 acres of the Bethlehem Steel property. We purchased the property in 2006. And we've been here redeveloping it. This is a 1 million square foot building that is 40 foot clear, which is state of the art today. It'll be in operations in October, so a couple months away.
Well, welcome to the Majestic Bethlehem Center, located here in eastern Pennsylvania. About 450 acres, very close to New York City and the Philadelphia metropolitan markets. Today, we've built about 2.5 million square feet of buildings, state-of-the-art high cube warehouse space. Here on the left is the very first building that we built and delivered in 2012. 800,000 square feet, occupied by Crayola.
So Majestic built us an 800,000 square foot
distribution center to service our entire business. This is our only distribution center worldwide, so we ship around the world from this Bethlehem location all of our Crayola products. 3.5 billion crayons in this building. It's about 3 months supply. Majestic's great to work with. We have a great partnership. We were the first folks in this park. And from building design to construction to taking occupancy, they were great partners.
Today, Walmart represents the Majestic's single largest tenant, and we're very proud of that. Walmart is certainly the largest and most successful of what they do, and to have them give us repeat business, we think is a validation of the good work that we started here and that we've been replicating across the country. The Majestic Bethlehem Center really used to look like a moonscape. There was nothing here. And if you look at it today with the beautiful state-of-the-art buildings, the landscaping that we've implemented, it really is nice to be able to see this transformation.
It's about more than just business with Mr. Roski. It's about more than just business with Majestic. Majestic has not only developed here and created jobs here, but they've become a great partner in our community, investing in organizations like the one I run that focus on economic development across the region, the Chamber of Commerce, and supporting local events. So Majestic is an important community member here in the Lehigh Valley.
Wow, what a fantastic presentation of the development Majestic Realty has done on the former Bethlehem Steel property. And now accepting the award of our Commercial and Industrial Project of the Year is Mr. Ed Roski, President of Majestic Realty, developer of over 83 million square feet of real estate nationwide, philanthropist, and co-owner of the Los Angeles Kings, Los Angeles Lakers, and Staples Center. Joining Mr. Roski is Mr. Ed Conjoyan, Senior Vice President of Majestic Realty, and Eric Scheller, Vice President and District Manager of Commerce Construction.
On behalf of Majestic Realty and our leader, Ed Roski Jr., I'd like to thank the March of Dimes Committee for awarding our Majestic Bethlehem Center the 2020 Project of the Year. I'd also like to acknowledge and congratulate the 2020 Person of the Year, Attorney Joe Zator. Now, I've been a regular attendee of this event for at least the past decade, and every year I would look at the program and marvel at the impressive list of past awardees, really a who's who of instrumental stakeholders and community-enhancing projects in the Lehigh Valley. For our Majestic Bethlehem Center to join their ranks is not only validating, but also truly humbling and a great honor. Now, Mr. Roski had intended to join me today to express his gratitude personally, but unfortunately, due to a family health situation, he is not able to. He did ask that I read the following message. What brought Majestic to the Lehigh Valley in the first place was that we felt the location and features of what has become the Majestic Bethlehem Center were very attractive. The Lehigh Valley is a dynamic area with a rich history and numerous amenities for employees and their families. And being the third largest metro in Pennsylvania, the large local labor pool for our tenants to draw talent was also very attractive. When Majestic first began discussions to acquire these 441 acres, we quickly understood the significance of the property and the trust that was being placed in us. This was more than just another real estate development. It was an opportunity to help reinvigorate the region by investing our time, energy, and resources, and in turn, create economic activity, jobs, and career advancement opportunities. There was plenty of available farmland around back then, which might have been easier to develop, but we felt that bringing jobs back to where people already lived, and where the infrastructure already existed, made the most sense for everyone. Our governmental partners in Pennsylvania, from state to local, have been key in making our vision a reality. The city of Bethlehem in particular, under current Mayor Bob Donchez and his predecessors, John Callahan and Don Cunningham, have been steadfast in their leadership and support. In fact, in our experience, the political leadership in Pennsylvania ranks among the very best in the nation. But also instrumental have been our local employees who have made it happen day in and day out, and our local engineers, advisors, and professionals who help us navigate through the development process. As a build and hold developer, we consider ourselves members of the communities where we put down roots, and we encourage our employees to volunteer and give back. Our team based here in the Lehigh Valley, prominently Eric Scheller, have done a wonderful job of community engagement.
Thank you. My name is Eric Scheller, and I am Vice President of Construction for Majestic Realty Co. here at the Majestic Bethlehem Center. Majestic Bethlehem Center is a great place to work. Over the past 10 years, Majestic has allowed me to become heavily involved in the local community. Majestic has partnered with the March of Dimes for this great event over the past several years, and we have also partnered with many other organizations in the Lehigh Valley. One of those organizations is the Northampton County Conservation District and their annual Envirothon. The Envirothon is where we bring several local high school teams out into the field for education and testing and a day of learning about environmental conservation. Another organization that we support is the Muscular Dystrophy Association and their annual Black and Blue Ball. Great event where we raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, being able to send the kids to do summer camp where they get to do kid stuff. Very important because most of the kids do not get to do that kind of thing the rest of the year, and it gives them a week of activities where they can do those things, and also the much needed research and funding to help find a cure for their disorder. We also currently serve on the board of the Valley Youth House, which is a nonprofit here in the Lehigh Valley that has about 20,000 youth in its program. And one of the projects that we are working on with the Valley Youth House now is the reconstruction and renovation of their cabins at the Camp Fowler facility in Orfield, PA. The project is taking a one-season cabin and turning it into a updated, state-of-the-art four-season cabin where we'll be able to touch the lives of these at-risk youths for many years to come. We also participate with the local Boy Scouts and part of their Mincy Trails Council here in the Lehigh Valley. Working with this great organization to provide funding so that they can continue to teach leadership skills to our youth. We certainly couldn't have participated in any of those other organizations without the support of the Majestic Realty Co. team, specifically Ed Roski and Ed Conjoyan. I also want to acknowledge the countless volunteer hours that our staff here in the Bethlehem office put into these organizations, finding time to help with the different events throughout the Lehigh Valley, all for raising funds to help the kids. We also want to congratulate both Attorney Joe Zator and the Majestic Bethlehem Center for being part of this great event for the March of Dimes. Thank you.
The Majestic Bethlehem Center is well down the path of fulfilling its original promise. We're currently under construction on a state-of-the-art 1 million square foot speculative building. And with another building or two after that, we will be fully built out. So with millions of square feet of facilities built and thousands of jobs created, the Majestic Bethlehem Center, we believe, has become the premier business park in the region and a national example of successful redevelopment. In conclusion, Mr. Roski and I wanted to thank the March of Dimes for this award, which Ed asked me to prominently display next to another treasured cup of his. A last statement, a quote from Mr. Roski, from Ed Roski. My dad, who founded Majestic in 1948, taught me that it's always about people. From the members of our team to the individuals in the community, each and every person has value, which is why being honored by the March of Dimes today is so meaningful. Your mission of helping babies and families is close to my heart. For those of you watching who have not contributed, I'd encourage you to join me in donating to this very worthy organization. Thank you very much.
We've come to that point in the program where we honor an individual who has made a significant impact on Lehigh Valley real estate. Each year, we honor an individual who has not only demonstrated a sense of commitment and dedication in giving back to the community, but who has also made a significant impact on the Lehigh Valley real estate landscape throughout their career. A few words to describe our honoree. I would say dedicated, honorable, and most importantly for this event, proud grandparent. To introduce the March of Dimes Commercial and Industrial Individual of the Year for 2020, please welcome David Jandal. David?
Thank you and good morning. I would like to thank the March of Dimes and its Real Estate Event Committee for inviting me to introduce the 2020 Real Estate Individual of the Year, my good friend Joe Zator. I would also like to congratulate Majestic Development, Ed Roski and Ed Conjonian, for receiving the Project of the Year. Great job, guys. Joe has been my friend and business counsel for over 30 years. Joe was recommended to me by a township manager and zoning officer who had experienced Joe at his township and said he is the best he has ever seen. Since that time, Joe has represented our companies at hundreds of municipal meetings, written hundreds of agreements, and has been a tremendous confidant over these many decades. Several years ago, after going through over a year of meetings and contentious hearings for a major project, which resulted in a positive outcome and a resounding win, the opposing counsel approached me to share his thoughts. He said, "You have a wonderful man representing you," and then he thanked me for the way Joe handled himself in his typical, respectful manner. I thought that spoke volumes of Joe. Joe has many positive attributes, but it always starts with his devotion to his family. Joe never gets rattled, no matter what the case, no matter how contentious things get, he never gets rattled. Very humble guy. Joe and his family are like family to us. And when I look at Joe, I don't look at my counsel, I look at my friend. I would now like to introduce my good friend, Joe Zator.
David, thank you. You're a true friend. I admire you immensely, and I love working with you. You're one of the smartest guys I know, so thank you. My family is really foremost in my mind and foremost in my heart, and I couldn't have accomplished anything without them. And a special shout out, a special thank you to my lovely wife, Maria. Maria mean the world to me, thank you. And I've got 3 great children, and they have 3 great spouses who are every bit my children. And I've been blessed with several grandchildren as well, and I found out that as much as I love being an attorney, being a grandparent's even the best job in the world. And so a thank you to each and every one of you, my children. I love you. As I look back on my years here in the Lehigh Valley, thinking about the projects and the work I've been involved with, but really what is most meaningful to me is having enjoyed the relationships that I've developed with friends, with clients. It's been a ride that has a long way to go yet, but it's one that has been really enjoyable. I was born in the coal regions, a little town called Shamokin in Northumberland County, and lived there till I was about 10 years old. And my family moved to the Lehigh Valley. My father was looking for an opportunity, and so we moved to Bethlehem. And grew up in the northwest part of town, just off of Route 378, Catasauqua Road. I lived there. I think I had a pretty normal childhood, and went through high school while I lived in Bethlehem. Becoming an Eagle Scout was something very important to me. The values I learned from family and faith, basically the golden rule, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you, was really emphasized in scouting through the Scout law. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. And those values stuck with me throughout my life. My junior year of high school, a representative of West Point came to my high school, and my guidance counselor, coach, teachers encouraged me to talk to that person, and I really didn't know anything about West Point, candidly. But they advised me to do it, so I did it. And it just really seemed like a great opportunity. One of the things that really struck a chord with me at West Point was the honor code. A cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate anyone who does. And that just really emphasized the value system that I grew up with, that I had as part of my life. And another aspect is the West Point motto, which is duty, honor, country. And I try to carry that forward, that philosophy forward in what I do today. And that's one of the reasons that the motto, the slogan of Zator Law is integrity, dedication, trust. I went to parachuting school, jump school, airborne school as it's called, while I was still at West Point. And following graduation, I went through my ranger training, my field artillery training, and after almost a year's worth of training, I found myself at Fort Bragg as a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division. I was a second lieutenant in the field artillery, and I spent about 4 years at Fort Bragg and had 55 parachute jumps, and probably would have had more, but my wife wasn't fond of that idea. But it was an amazing experience for my development. After 10 years on active duty in the military, I decided it was time to hang up the uniform and did move back to the Lehigh Valley. I think the Lehigh Valley is just a wonderful place to live, work, raise a family. And at that point I had 3 children and decided, along with my wife, that it was the right thing to do. Didn't at all regret my time in the military. It was wonderful. And it was difficult to take that uniform off. I still miss crisp salutes and spit-shine boots, although I guess today they're not spit-shine anymore, but they were at the time. I settled down practicing law, doing what I do today. And I'm a transactional lawyer in business and real estate and land use attorney. And I've been doing that now for 31 years. And I love it. It's fun. It's great to be involved with good people and good projects and see the Lehigh Valley transform. I've had the wonderful opportunity to work on some great projects over the years, and I couldn't even begin to think of all of them right now on the spur of the moment and list them all. Madison Farms, Hanover Corporate Center, Monocacy Farms, MacArthur Town Center, the redevelopment of the Walmart facility in Whitehall Township, the 700-acre Spring Creek Properties development, Movie Tavern, being involved with Ocean Spray for its facility to go in. The transactional side, the sale of land so Air Products could put up its new corporate headquarters. Industrial, tens of millions of square feet. Rezoning of thousands of acres over the course of this time that I've been involved. The Hamilton Crossing Shopping Center. The list just goes on and on and on. Being involved with these kinds of projects over the course of the past several decades, it's been fun. It's been enjoyable, it's been energizing, and it's been fun not just because of the change of the landscape that I've had the opportunity to work with, but because of the good people I've had the opportunity to work with. Whether it be the developer, the landowner, the architect, the engineer, the realtor, the broker, the contractor, in some cases even leasing agents and property managers. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's a great industry to be involved, and so to be here today talking to you a little bit about my past, I'm really humbled by that. I enjoy working with all of you professionals in the Lehigh Valley in this wonderful industry. If you think back a few short decades ago, Bethlehem Steel, Mack Trucks, major employers, and they were on the downswing, and Bethlehem Steel is not even around any longer. When I was growing up, I thought I would go to work for Bethlehem Steel. It seemed like everybody in the neighborhood did. And yet, the valley has moved on. We've transformed. And land use and development has been an important part of that moving on. And no one necessarily foresaw the direction that everything would take when we were looking at this back in the 1980s. But look how the Lehigh Valley has thrived. And I see that as continuing in the future for the Lehigh Valley. We're a great people. We have a great work ethic. We've got a lot of intelligent people here and a lot of good people. And we're going to find a way to take the lessons of the past and this more recent COVID-19 experience and take lemonade and turn it into, or take lemons and turn it into lemonade. And the Lehigh Valley's done that over the years, and we're going to do that again. And I think that all of us in the room, all of us that are listening and watching, we're going to have a part in that. There's so many wonderful organizations in this community that we call the Lehigh Valley, and I like to think that at least in a meaningful way, albeit a small way, I've given back to the community when I have been able to do so. And whether that be with time, talent, or treasure, as the saying goes, I've tried to help out when I can, and I look forward to even more of that as time marches on. And I encourage everyone else to do the same.
Our committee has a wonderful tradition of selecting, recognizing, and awarding individuals who demonstrate the highest quality of achievement in the Lehigh Valley real estate community. We could not be more pleased to award Attorney Joseph Zator the 2020 March of Dimes Commercial and Industrial Real Estate Individual of the Year. And with that, let's hear from Attorney Joe Zator.
There are so many talented contributors to this vibrant real estate community in the Lehigh Valley. So it's with great humility that I stand here accepting this recognition. I've been coming to this event for 27 years. I've only missed a few. And I never imagined that one day I'd be standing here accepting this award. Thank you. And a few special thanks. David Jandal and your family, thank you for the trust you've placed in me over the years, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. Your family is my family. Boy Scout Troop 352 of Mincy Trails Council, great job guys with that Pledge of Allegiance. March of Dimes Committee, you've done a great job putting this event together as you always do. To the clients of Zator Law, thank you. To my colleagues at Zator Law, my partner Andrew Hoffman and the attorneys, as well as our paralegals and our staff. You do a great job every day and it's fun to come to work because of that. To our sponsors of this event and each of you participating, you raise the funds that help the March of Dimes, a great cause. And to my family, my wife Maria in particular, thank you. I'm standing here today at the Korea-Vietnam Memorial on the campus of Lehigh Carbon Community College. It's a special place for me. 15 years ago, I stood here and gave the keynote dedication speech. It's a monument dedicated to men and women in uniform, past, present, and future. And one of the things that's seldom discussed, seldom written about, are the humanitarian efforts of our soldiers, our sailors, our Marines, our airmen and women. And you'll see that this monument, this bronze, depicts a soldier or a Marine with 2 children. And I thought it was fitting for today because that's what the March of Dimes is all about, children, helping children, just as these soldiers do, just as sailors do, just as Marines do, just as all our men and women in uniform do. The commercial and industrial real estate industry in the region has always been a catalyst, a driver for many good things. Jobs, revitalization of our communities, economic prosperity, growth, encouraging diversity, both culturally and ethnically, philanthropy, an ethos of optimism. In other words, it contributes greatly to bettering our community. And a great example of that is the project that's received recognition today, the Majestic Bethlehem Center. Majestic Realty, congratulations. Mr. Roski, Ed Conjoyan, and your team, well done. I think it would be great if we all could continue this legacy that the real estate community has had in the Lehigh Valley. And I think personally, one of the best ways to do that is for each of us to look beyond ourselves, to help others. Help others by giving of our time, our talents, and our financial resources. And when you think about it, what better cause could there be than helping babies to survive, to grow, and to have the same opportunities throughout their life that each of us have had, you and I. We can all do this. We can all be a force for good. Thank you. Have a great day.
On behalf of the March of Dimes and the hardworking and dedicated members of the organizing committee, we're very grateful to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule this afternoon to help us congratulate our honorees and help raise money for the March of Dimes. Given that we could not do this function in person as we typically do, please consider a few important items. First, the committee would ask that you please consider taking a moment to send a congratulatory email or a social media post in recognition of Attorney Joseph Zator and Majestic Realty for Majestic Bethlehem Center, since we all could not be here together to give those well wishes in person today. Second, please pause for a moment to consider funding the mission to help the March of Dimes to support families like Laura's in their time of need. You can support the cause and further COVID-19 research as it relates to pregnancies by texting BABIES LV to 41444. Last but not least, I would like to acknowledge this year's committee members who have dedicated their time, talent, and treasure to make this year's event a big success. First, I'd like to start with this year's vice chair and truly a counterpart for this production, Joe Correa of J.G. Petrucci Company. And now, I'd like to recognize all of my fellow committee members who made this event possible despite the circumstances this year. Each and every one of the members played such an important role in a different aspect of the event, and there's no way we could have pulled this event off without each and every one of them. So I'd like to recognize each one of them. Rosa Nima, community volunteer. Martin Brands, March of Dimes. Krista Kraftitian, Spillman Farmer Architects. Kate English, Duke Realty. Bill Erdman, Keystone Consulting Engineers. Bud Hackett, Development Planning Associates. Kostas Harousis, Varaxia Commercial Real Estate Solutions. Adam Jandal, Jandal Land Company. Mike Geithner, Bowler Engineering. Anna Martins, Van Cleef Engineering. Liz Martin, Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation. Leslie Marone, Howard Hanna The Frederick Group. Brett Showalter, St. Luke's University Health Network. Pete Reinke, Univest. Justin Ryan, LVIP. Eric Schopp, Fitzpatrick Lenson Buba. Frank Smith, NAI Summit. And Laura Ladone Weiss, Ladone & Associates. Thanks again to the committee for their commitment to putting together a quality production each and every year. If someone in the audience is interested in joining us, please reach out to one of the committee members. We're always interested in adding dynamic people to our group. Again, thanks for joining us today and raising this tremendous amount of money, which will greatly help support the moms, babies, and families that need it. This concludes our program. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to your continued support of the March of Dimes at this event next year.